All right, welcome everybody. Today we are going to be talking about economics as a field of study and this word, scarcity, because really the whole field of economics would not exist if it wasn't for the word scarcity or the concept, the idea of scarcity. So the first thing we should do when learning about economics is just talk about what the word economics actually means, what it is. Because the first thing that I think of when I think of economics, or that you might think of too, is things like money and taxes and savings and budgeting and the stock market and stuff like that. And that's all totally valid. But when we define economics, you're probably going to find that it's actually a lot more simple than you thought. Economics is really the study of how society or individuals uses its limited resources. So the study of how society uses its limited resources. And we can think of that concept, that definition, by the question, who gets what and how do they get it, right? So you can see how money can really play in here. But really, again, economics is really just how the study of how society uses its limited resources. So there's a couple of ways that we as a society or as individuals can get the things that we want or need. And the first of those is money, right? We use money to purchase our needs and wants most of the time. Back in the day, you might have done something called bartering, which is where instead of using money to buy something, you just trade something that you have for something that somebody else has, like a farmer who trades a couple of cows for a new plow. You know, maybe the other farmer really needed some cows, the first farmer needed the plow, and they just kind of traded and everybody's happy, right? No money was ever exchanged. They just traded one thing for another. And the last option is obviously just making things yourself, right? You don't have to use money or bartering. If you need food, why don't you just grow it yourself, right? That's another way that we can satisfy our needs and wants. So before we move on, I just want to call your attention to this phrase, limited resources, because just about everything in the world is limited. There's a limited amount of them, or there's a limited amount that can be created. So that brings us to the problem of scarcity. And scarcity just really means that there's a limited amount of resources, but they have to meet unlimited wants and needs, right? There's not enough of something to go around. That's a good way to think of scarcity, right? If you've ever heard that there's a scarce amount or a scarce supply of something, usually just means, like I said, that there's not enough of that thing to satisfy everybody. There's not enough for it to go around. Everything is scarce. Everything is scarce. There are different degrees of scarcity. Not everything has the same amount of scarcity, but definitely in some way, shape, or form, just about everything on Earth is scarce. So why do we have scarcity? Well, again, we kind of talked about this, right? We as people have unlimited wants and needs. There are a lot of us, and we all want different things. But there's a limited amount of resources on the planet to meet those needs, right? Think about something like gasoline. There's not an unlimited amount of gasoline in the world, but most people need it to get around. So that means that there's an issue of scarcity. And because of scarcity, that's why we need to make choices as human beings. We need to choose what it is we're going to produce. We need to choose how we're going to produce it. And we also need to think about who we're going to produce, whatever we produce for, right? You think about a farmer who, he's producing food, right? But he can't produce enough food for everybody on the planet. So he has to make some decisions about who he's actually producing food for. Which company is he going to sell his food to, or which farmer's market could he get the most bang for his buck for with his produce, right? Scarcity creates all of these questions, these choices that we have to make. Because, one more time, there's a limited amount of resources on the planet, but we as people have unlimited wants and needs. There's just not enough resources to go around for everybody equally, and that leads to these choices that we'll see. So what causes scarcity? Well, there's really three main things. There's this idea of a personal perspective. We can kind of create scarcity for ourselves through our feelings and our thoughts. We might say, I'm starving, right? Because we have an idea that there's a scarce amount of food. I'm not getting the food that I need right now. There's a limited amount and I want it. Same with just saying I'm broke, right? I really need money. There's a scarce amount of money in my life. I have all these wants and needs and things I want to spend money on, but there's a scarce amount of money. That's coming from our own feelings or our situation. Another cause of scarcity is just the poor distribution of resources. And really, this just means not using our money or our time or our other resources to their fullest potential. So you might have once said, I never have any time to get my schoolwork done, but somehow I'm also able to watch 6 hours of TV a day, right? Maybe we're just not using good time management, right? Anytime somebody talks about time management or time organization, what they're really talking is about scarcity. Because you don't have an unlimited amount of time in your day to get all these things done. There's a scarce amount of time, but there's probably an unlimited or very large amount of things on your list that you would like to get done. People always, there's that expression, there's not enough hours in the day, right? And that's because of scarcity. Let's look at the third, the rapid increase in demand. Now, this COVID really, I think, made this clear for a lot of people. And that's really a rapid increase in demand means that there is a sudden rush to use resources that can create a shortage. Shortage meaning there's just not enough of a particular thing. So let's think about, COVID and toilet paper, right? That was like the classic example going around where COVID hit, you started having all the shutdowns, and people were worried about not having enough, toilet paper at home. So there was a rush of people to Costco and Weiss or Giant Eagle or whatever, to go get their toilet paper. That sudden rush to get all the toilet paper in the store created a shortage of toilet paper for everybody else, right? You might have gone to the grocery store next day and there might have been no toilet paper on the shelves because it was all taken, right? There was a scarce amount of toilet paper. So we know that scarcity exists. We know a couple of main causes of scarcity, what causes scarcity to occur. So how can we deal with it? Because it's not an issue that's going to go away. Well, one thing we can do is just do without something, right? There may be something that we want or that we at least feel like we need, but we can decide, I'm going to give it up and just make this other decision because I don't have enough resources to meet both of these needs. So maybe instead of driving to the theater and spending my limited amount of money on a movie ticket and gas and things like that, how about I just stay home and watch something on TV? It's cheaper, right? I'm going to save gas money. I'm going to save money on Sour Patch Kids or whatever at the concession stand. I'm going to do without it because I have a scarce amount of money and I need to make sure that I'm using it in the right way. So another way that we can deal with scarcity is just creating more resources. I mentioned gasoline earlier. Think about oil. That's usually an issue of scarcity that you might hear in the news. There's a scarce amount of oil or running out of oil or something like that. So, what some people decide to do is just drill for more. Let's just go find somewhere else where we can drill for oil because we're running low and we need to create more of these resources. Or maybe in your day-to-day life, you just think I've got a scarce amount of money. So what I'm going to do is just get a second job and create more of that resource, money, for myself. And the last example of ways that we can deal with scarcity is just making better use of our resources, right? If we carpool to work, it'll save gas money. If we use our time or our money in a smarter way, we can sort of deal with that issue of scarcity by satisfying our needs, right? But it's going to require some choices. If we carpool, that means that not everybody can drive their own car and get to leave at whatever time they want. They have to give up a couple of things, but at the end of the day, that means that they're saving gas money. So with scarcity comes this idea of trade-offs. Trade-offs is really just when you choose between two possible uses for a resource and you give up one alternative for another. So let's say you have a limited amount of money and you have to make a trade-off. I can either buy a book that I want or I can buy pizza, but I don't have enough money for both. I have to make a trade-off. There's two possible uses for my money, two possible uses for this resource, so I have to give something up, right? And we kind of talked about that before, where you have to, give up one option so that you can, use your money in a smart way. And again, that brings us to this idea of opportunity costs. When you make a trade-off, when you decide between two things, there's going to be a cost. And the cost is really just what you decided to give up. So the value of time, money, goods, and services that's given up in an economic choice is the opportunity cost. So let's look back at our previous example so we can try to explain this. So we had to choose between buying a book or the pizza, right? Let's say we decided to go with the book. We made a trade-off and we decided to buy the book with our limited amount of money because money is scarce. So the opportunity cost in that decision that we made is we don't get to enjoy this nice piece of pizza, right? It's the number one alternative. That's your opportunity cost. By doing this, I give up the opportunity to do that. By spending my money on a book, I'm giving up the opportunity to have a pizza, right? And here it is down here again. If I choose to buy the pizza, I can't buy the book. The value of, reading that book and looking at it and learning things from it, that is the opportunity cost. So let's look at some trade-offs here. Let's lay it all out on a table. Sleep versus study. So let's say we've got 3 hours, right, that we can decide how we're going to spend our time. There's scarcity. We don't have an unlimited amount of hours in the day, so we have to make some choices of how we spend our time. Option one, let's say we're studying for a test. I'm going to study for 1 extra hour, and the benefit of studying for an extra hour is I get a C on that test. But what did I give up? What was the opportunity cost by choosing that hour of extra study time? Well, I lost out on an hour of sleep. The hour of time I spent studying, I could have been spending sleeping, right? That's the opportunity cost. But there is a benefit of getting maybe a little bit better of a grade than I would have gotten if I hadn't studied. What if we bump that up to 2 hours of extra study time? Well, that's going to bring us up from a C to a B. So the benefit is we get a bit of a better grade, and the opportunity cost is that we get, we lose out on an extra hour of sleep. And what about if we bump it up to 3 hours? Well, our grade goes up again because we spent a little bit more time studying. We get a B plus instead of a B. But that means that, again, the opportunity cost is higher too because we're losing out on 3 hours of sleep. So again, just to kind of tie it all together, this table demonstrates scarcity because there is a scarce amount of time in your day. You don't have an unlimited amount of time to do everything that we want to do. Obviously, if we had an unlimited amount of time, maybe we would study and sleep. But we can't. We have to make a trade-off. So the trade-off is choosing between using that extra time to study or using that extra time to take a nap. So we have to make a decision. We choose to do the 2 hours of study time, for example. There's a benefit. We get a B on the test. And the opportunity cost, what we lose out on, the number one alternative in that decision, is we lose the 2 extra hours of sleep. So I hope that was a helpful introduction to scarcity, opportunity cost, and trade-offs. Don't worry if you don't feel like you didn't quite understand everything. There are 2 play posits to look at with scarcity and opportunity costs, and we will also be reviewing this stuff the next time I see you. This is just to get you introduced to the topic, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you. All right, I'll leave you to it. Go check out those play posits